Good morning once again, friends, family, clients, other financial advisors watching. My name is Ron Bullis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Lifeworks Advisors, and I am just really excited to get to have an opportunity to share some thoughts with you guys today on this chilly October fall day here in Michigan. So I hope you've got a cup of coffee, orange juice, drink, and that your morning is off to a great start. Today's conversation isn't going to be a market update where we're talking about the economy, the investment performance of our portfolios, what's going on in the financial markets. That's coming in a couple of weeks, so stand by on that. I know we've been off that for the last couple of months. Our team's been working on some things, and we took a few months off here in the late summer, early fall. But in a couple of weeks, be watching actually early next week for an announcement from our team with the date for our next market update. And boy, do we have a lot of stuff to cover and to go over. So we will be having a full market update conversation live client event happening in the next couple of weeks. Stand by for that announcement. And then towards the end of November and December, we also have planned some additional live client events around factor investing, cryptocurrencies, and what we expect in 2022 from the financial markets. That one's gonna be a little bit of a grab bag of anybody's guess, but we're gonna give a few things that we believe are right around the corner that we should be paying attention to. So what are we gonna cover today? Well, we have a couple of questions from some clients about a few market and economic things. I'm gonna tackle those right at the top to make sure that those are addressed. But here's what I hope to do today. I want to share a conversation that I had with a friend and client a few weeks back when my family was on vacation down in Charleston, South Carolina. I want to talk about that conversation because it led me to realize that I hadn't shared with you, our clients, a good update around what Lifeworks' business plan is, where we're going, why we're doing what we're doing. I also want to share a personal story, a deeply personal story. It'll connect to why is Ron wearing this stylish 1945 cardigan. I want to share a personal story about this. And then I'm going to close with an invitation and a challenge for everybody that I think is very timely. In the fourth quarter of every year, Lifeworks focuses on estate and legacy planning, and our invitation and challenge is going to be around that. So without further ado, buckle up. I'm going to tackle a couple of questions here first. Then I'm going to share a conversation I had with a client a few weeks ago on vacation, a personal story, and then a challenge for everyone watching. All right, first question we had was about how are we adapting our portfolio to the ever-changing economy? This is a fantastic question, and there is a polarity here between chasing trends and making lots and lots of rapid changes versus staying stagnant and having the world kind of walk past you. Our team is very thoughtful and very intentional here. So part of why we updated our investment strategies in a very big way this summer by our acquisition of AIMVest Technologies. I've talked about that a little bit in the past. By bringing in factor-based investing and quantitative investing tools and strategies to Lifeworks, it gives us the ability to dynamically update our equity portfolios and our different investment strategies as changes are happening in the economy and in the market. Now, we're not day trading. We're not doing momentum trading, so we're not buying and selling stuff every day. Don't misinterpret that. But we also made significant advances in our capabilities. We really, truly have one of the most state-of-the-art and forward-thinking investment platforms of any RIA in the country. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation as I share this conversation I had with a client of ours while on vacation. So I'll dig into that a little bit more, but the short answer is we have investment committee meetings regularly. Our team's talking about it. And we also now have the technology and the expertise behind it to make dynamic changes to our strategies as they're warranted. So we are making updates. We're making adjustments to our portfolios, especially diversified Premia, which is our foundational factor-based strategy. And those changes are happening quarterly right now. There shouldn't be anything that comes down the pipe that would warrant a massive wholesale change, i.e. throwing the baby out with the bathwater and everything. There are probably some type of apocalyptic events that would drive some kind of massive change like that. But in terms of where we're sitting today with our investment strategies, what we see coming in the next few years, and what our mission is, right, which is to help you, our client, manage wealth over a long period of time, over multiple generations, the updating our portfolios needs to be something that's done cautiously, needs to be done with discipline and rigor, right? And it needs to have some science behind it, so that as we're making the adjustments and the movements, we can articulate why we have thought it through, we've investigated it, we've analyzed it, and we believe it's the right thing to do. So we're doing adjustments, they're happening. There'll probably be small ones that most of the time people won't see, where we're just changing the weights on a few things or adding an equity here or there, but we are making adjustments based on what's happening in the economy and the market. So great question. Another question, I could do an entire webinar on this, is around inflation. What are our thoughts on inflation and the impacts near term, long term? Brian, thanks for that question. Here's the thing, the narrative that has been out there in the financial news for the most part, and maybe, dare I even say mainstream media, is this idea of transitory inflation. I'm a student of history, I love reading about economics. This is the first time I've ever heard the term transitory inflation, because for something to be transitory, it means it has to be temporal, and that it's going to revert back to some type of normal. Well, I don't think there's anything out there, and I don't think there's anybody out there that believes that we're going to have this run up in the cost of goods and services, i.e. how inflation's defined, and then somehow that's magically going to fall back down to what? The 2019 levels, the 2018 levels, 2020. So I think the narrative around transitory inflation that we've seen this summer is one more of buttressing the reality to try and soften the blow to the average consumer, the average American, that things are going to cost more. And why that's happening, I think there's a lot of nuance. I think there's a lot of different things at play. Clearly, in a global central banking environment between the US, the Bank of Japan, and the European Central Bank, every one of those major central banks printed just an enormous amount of new cash through the COVID crisis and even to today. And they're still doing it, right? I believe last time I was chatting with Alex, our head of investment strategy, he was sharing with me that the Federal Reserve is still on pace to purchase something like $130 to $150 billion of bonds in the open market, which means they're creating $130 billion to $150 billion of new cash every month. The cash created by central banks in the US and abroad is one of the biggest drivers of inflation. In fact, there are economists out there that argue that the price of goods and services going up is only caused by the amount of cash and capital that central banks create. Okay, so on top of that, we also had the global supply chain has been significantly impacted. We had millions and millions of workers that were told to stay home because of the COVID pandemic. And this isn't an analysis to whether the policies that the governments have taken are effective or ineffective or should do or shouldn't do. This is just the statement of the reality that millions and millions of people around the world were told to stay home and not work. In the US, many of those people were paid. We are now, I believe, feeling the effects or the after effects of those decisions in terms of supply chain congestion. Just look at the ports in California as a great example. Finding labor is one of the biggest challenges now for companies, and companies are having to pay more and offer higher salaries, higher hourly wages to attract people. Add to that the cost of other inputs, whether it is natural resources or different things, also going up as well because of some of the supply chain constraints. And you have probably the perfect storm, in my opinion, and our team, I believe, thinks the same way, for a significant impact both in the near term and the long term due to rising prices of goods and services, i.e. inflation. Once you start an economic cycle, and this is, again, my opinion as being a student of history, it's not very likely that an economy the size of the US just stops, pivots on a dime, and goes the other direction. There's something called inertia, right, behind this large of an enterprise, this large of an organization, collectively all of us together. So I don't see us getting off the inflation escalator quickly. I don't see it changing anytime soon. I think the labor supply issues are going to continue to be a problem. It looks like the central banks around the world and the Federal Reserve here in the United States plan on printing more money, which is, again, inflationary by definition. So I think in the near term, expect goods of prices and services to continue to push higher. I think in the long term, expect the effects of inflation to be felt for a while. The interesting thing about where we're sitting right now is pretty much everybody that is a reasonable economist or financial markets pundit agrees that inflation is 5+% so far, right, for the year. But interest rates haven't moved such. So we're in this environment where long-term interest rates are still really low, which would signal an economic output decline. It would signal that there's an anticipation of some type of recession or reduced economic output coming, which would not be a good thing for anybody, right? And at the same time, we have cost of goods and services rising rapidly. So it's a really challenging time to think about how we hold safe assets, right? It's a challenging time for people that have lots of cash. It's a challenging time for people that have lots of money invested in bonds or fixed income, because inflation is outpacing significantly the yield that we're earning on our cash in the bank and fixed income and bonds. So I don't expect the impacts or the effects of inflation to be small, and I also don't expect it to be short-lived. So I think the near-term and the long-term effects are going to essentially be this long kind of ramp up where we're going to have to deal with it. Then we're going to go through an economic cycle. Productivity will drop. We'll have economic output decline. That's generally called a recession. Probably have some type of market pullback with that. And then everything resets and the cycle will start again. So there's probably a ways yet to go while we're going to be in this increasing inflationary aspect world. The short answer to that is we try and minimize the amount of cash we're holding, and we try and minimize the amount of fixed income or bonds that we're holding, right? And I won't talk about the strategy of how we're mitigating that, but if you've been a client for a while, and Brian, you were the one that asked this question, you probably have a reasonable understanding of why we own equities instead of fixed income and why we're using hedging strategies with those equities to try and avoid the trap of having our returns on our fixed income and cash be less than what inflation is in losing purchasing power. Third question that was sitting out there was the debt ceiling. This is a political one. There's a lot of misnomers about the debt ceiling. I would say I hesitate to give recommendations to people that go like, listen to this politician or this politician because the world's so polarized. But I do think that somebody who's doing a good job in this regards is a former Navy SEAL from Texas. His name's Dan Crenshaw. You don't have to agree with all of his politics. I certainly don't. But I think he's doing a reasonable job on his Instagram pages and some of his social media pages explaining what the debt ceiling actually means, right? The US government isn't going to just stop tomorrow if the Republicans and the Democrats don't come together and come up with some kind of debt ceiling compromise. If I was a betting person, and I'm not, but if I was, they've managed to come up with a compromise because both parties love to spend money, and neither party wants to be the party left holding the bag when all the music stops. So I think they're going to do something, but the expansion of the debt ceiling and the limits there really only impacts the government's discretionary spending. It doesn't impact the spending around Social Security, Medicare, defense, right? So the vast majority of the US government's budget and where they spend their money is non-discretionary things. Those things are going to happen even if the debt ceiling is not raised. So just know, when alarmists are out there saying the world's going to come to an end if the debt ceiling isn't raised, I think it's just that. I think it's alarmism. I think it's clickbait. I think it gets, people, myself included, to watch a talking head on TV or to click on an article and read it online. So I wouldn't be super concerned with the debt ceiling not being passed. This has been something that seems like the same story that gets played every 8 to 12 months for the last decade. So I anticipate that they're probably going to have some kind of resolution there. If they don't, and non-discretionary spending freezes for a while, or we have some issue refinancing some debt, I believe that they will come to a solution quite quickly. Might not be the one we like, but they'll definitely come to one. But maybe check out Dan Crenshaw, US Rep Dan Crenshaw. Again, you don't have to agree with his politics. I certainly don't agree with everything, but I think he's doing a nice job on some of his social media pages trying to explain this debt ceiling challenge and what it actually means. Okay, market update in a couple weeks. We'll dig into these. As always, don't hesitate to send questions even outside of the these live client events and market updates and our writing. Feel free to email us, send us questions, whether you want to direct it to Alex Matei-Cathala, our head of investment strategy, or Derek Vermeulen, our chief investment officer, myself, etc. Fire questions away. We'll happily answer them at any point in time, have one-on-one conversations. Okay, here's what I really wanted to talk about today. Not that I didn't want to cover your questions. That stuff's always fun. couple weeks back, I was in Charleston. My family vacations there every year. My wife and 4 kids and I go down there. And this year we had the pleasure of staying with one of our clients and someone who's become a dear friend to our family. And one night while we were in his sitting room, we had put the kids to bed, and he looks at me and he says, his name's Bob, by the way. He looks at me and he says, Ron, he goes, help me understand what's going on with Lifeworks, right? He goes, I feel like you guys are doing a lot of things. I see stuff out there now on YouTube where you're interviewing other CEOs and executives in the industry. You're building software. He's like, I'd just love to understand. What are you doing? What's going on with Lifeworks? And I said, well, don't you know this, this, and this? And he goes, no, I hadn't heard about that. And what I realized from this conversation with Bob, and what I want to unpack and then go from there, is that we, and I'm going to actually just point to me, haven't done a great job keeping you, our clients, up to date on what Lifeworks is working on, what our business plans are, and some of the really exciting stuff that we have coming. I can recognize from that conversation with Bob that there might be some confusion, because through this summer I've put out a lot of podcast videos with other industry leaders focusing on things for advisors and not putting out as much content for you, our clients, or market updates and things of that nature. So I stepped back, and as I was talking to Bob, when he asked, help me understand where Lifeworks is going, one of my responses to him, and my response to you if you were asking the same question, is that Lifeworks is working to build a firm that is going to provide value and serve our clients today and across multiple generations into the future. I'm passionate about building things that will last long past me. So then Bob says to me when I gave him roughly that answer, I'm paraphrasing a long conversation in a sitting room. He said, that's great, but what does that mean? And I said, well, let me give you an example. When we started Lifeworks Advisors, we had this idea that we'd be able to use the best technology in the industry and build this world-class client experience and this really unique subscription-based financial planning service that I believed then, and I still believe now, is the right approach for how to provide unbiased fiduciary level advice to clients. The challenge with it was this. We wound up having 12, maybe 15 different software platforms that it took for us to run our firm. Okay? And this is a little bit of the sausage, how the sausage is made conversation, so bear with me here. As we started to grow rapidly and as clients became really attracted to our investment strategies and our subscription-based pricing, because we're one of the only firms still in the country that's modernized the fee structure for the industry, what we found becoming an ever-increasing challenge was navigating all these different types of softwares to still deliver what we had promised to you, our client, right? And as we stepped back and looked at this, we realized every firm in the industry has this same problem, okay? We were a very young, modern startup RIA, and we stepped out there and started talking to other firms and like, yeah, we have this same issue, right? I'll give you another example. For a simple task, like a simple function of being an advisor at Lifeworks would be providing a financial plan to you, our client, right? When we started, it took us multiple steps and multiple different software platforms to complete a financial plan for a client, which made the experience take longer. It was kind of clunky. There was friction to it. But the biggest challenge with it is it limited the amount of time we actually could spend with you, our client, talking about and advising you on the things that matter most. It also created a limit. Our industry doesn't do a good job talking about this to our clients, but roughly the industry average is that for every one financial advisor, they can handle or serve about 100 households, about 100 clients. So what's happened in our industry over the years is as advisors have become more successful, the longer they're in business, they stopped working with clients that have lower incomes or smaller amounts of investable assets, and they're only wanting to work with clients that have larger investment accounts or higher incomes. Well, why? Well, if I can only handle 100 because of the constraints of technology and time, would I rather have 100 clients that each have $1 million of assets to invest, or 100 clients with $100,000? So there's been this natural kind of evolution in the industry where advisors and firms tend to focus on serving clients that have more money rather than clients that have less. That's a big problem in my eyes, because part of what the US specifically has a challenge with is financial literacy. It's everywhere. Like you can do a quick Google search or DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine you want to use around the number of people in the United States that have never worked with a financial advisor, that don't have a financial plan, that feel like they don't have enough assets, they don't make enough money, that's not for me. And so what happens? We wind up with a large group of people, especially the next generation, that are not working with a financial advisor because the structure isn't there for them to do that, right? So I said to Bob, my friend, I said, one of the things that I believe we have to do is we have to invest in technology that allows us to scale operationally and that can automate 70, 80, 90% of the work that advisors do behind the scenes. So for every 1 hour that a Lifeworks advisor, or if I was doing advising for you, for every 1 hour I spend on the phone call or a video call with you, we're probably spending 2 to 4 hours behind the scenes doing prep and moving stuff into different softwares and running analysis and things like this, okay? That's fine, but we realized we could build software and technology that could automate a lot of those behind the scenes tasks. As I was saying this to Bob, and he was in the strategic planning for a large publicly traded company, he got it right away. And he says, I get it, Ron. What you're trying to do is to take things off of your advisors, use technology where appropriate so that you guys can scale. And the result is more face-to-face time with your advisors, more focus on me and my family, and you can help more people. And I said, exactly. That's why we've been we're investing in technology, we're building out a platform for other financial advisors to join. So the Lifeworks solution and what we've been looking to build is an all-in-one platform that in real time connects collaboratively you, our clients, with your financial advisor, and then the technology is doing compliance and notes and paperwork and a lot of the things that are required of us from a regulatory perspective or just from a due diligence and fiduciary perspective. We're building the technology to automate that so we can deliver a better result to you. And the best part of it is if we cut down on the amount of time it takes from a prep and just gathering information and doing work, not only is it more seamless for you, we can actually spend more time focusing on how to build better plans and how to provide better advice to you, our client. So we became what the industry calls a wealth tech company. We started a software firm in the end of 2018, early 2019. And then in 2020, we actually went out there to market and we secured venture capital investment from a gentleman by the name of Marty Bicknell. He's the CEO of Mariner Wealth Advisors. They're I don't even know where they're maybe at, 40, 50, 60 billion dollars of assets under management. They're one of the largest firms in the industry. And Marty is a thought leader and somebody at the CEO level for wealth management firms that's just considered to be one of the guys leading the charge in our industry. I interviewed him shortly after we closed on our investment, and I said, Marty, what was it about Lifeworks that made you so excited about investing in us? And he said, without hesitation, Ron, I believe what you guys are building is the future of advice. You're building a platform that's going to use the best modern technology, we call that high tech, and working to blend it seamlessly in a way with high human touch. We're not building technology to make a financial advisor obsolete. We're actually building technology because we believe that the work we do for our clients, for you, helping you build good strategic plans and roadmaps for the future, helping you make wise decisions. How do we navigate inflation? How do we navigate the debt ceiling? How do we adjust our portfolio? We believe that the work we do in helping you manage your wealth and serving your family across multiple generations is noble work. And for us to continue doing that in the future, for advisors to stay relevant and to be able to do what they're having to do, we recognize that we had to build a platform that didn't exist. And so that's why we've been investing heavily in creating our own software application and our own mobile apps. We are really, really appreciative that you guys have been patient as we've had bugs and glitches, which is going to happen when we're building software along the way. And we are just really excited for what's coming. So as Bob and I were winding up that conversation, what we didn't have time to get into that night because it was getting late is why. I've shared a little bit about why we're doing this from the business planning perspective, right? And Lifeworks Vision is to deliver the future of advice for our clients today. Our vision is to build an all-in-one, a seamless application where you and your advisor can collaborate real time. You can manage your investments outside of Lifeworks through this application. You can see the returns and the information about all the investments at Lifeworks, right? We have this very seamless, connected platform where all of the time spent on those details gets minimized, and all of the majority of the time is spent working on your plan and how you're making decisions. Like, that's the vision. What I didn't get to get into with Bob that night in that conversation is, why is this important for Ron Bullis? Why was this important for me to take our firm and to add this to it? Well, this is where I want to share a personal story. It'll connect to the cardigan that I'm wearing now. Growing up, my summer was spent working on construction sites with my grandfather, who I share his name. My grandfather was Ron Bullis, my dad's Ron Bullis, I'm Ron Bullis. So I was homeschooled my whole life, and my mom would tell me, when you get done with school, you can either do more school or you can go work with grandpa. Well, you could guess what a young boy would choose to do. I chose to spend as many hours as I could with my grandfather on construction sites. And he was a carpenter. He was a general contractor. He managed large commercial crews for part of his time. And I spent hours with him at job sites. I've had the fortune of laying concrete, laying bricks, sweeping floors, doing demolition, framing walls, building cabinets, most everything that you could possibly do on a construction site. When I was a teenager, my grandfather had me doing it. But I also got to spend hours with him in his wood shop. He taught me how to build cabinets. He taught me how to build furniture. He taught me how to build things the right way. And he used to have a little bit of a joke, like if we were framing a wall or hanging a door or something, where he'd say, "Ronnie, we're not building a church and we're not building a piano. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to last." Meaning it can't be shabby work, but it might not be perfectly plumb, right? Well, this summer, my grandfather passed away. He was married to my grandmother for 71 years, and him and my grandmother both passed away on the same day within about 4 hours of each other. Probably the storybook ending to a family and a marriage that had its ups and downs, certainly had hardships, but just an amazing life that they led, right? And I was fortunate to spend the last couple days of my grandfather's life with him in the hospital. Not how you want to remember somebody who's your hero, who's this, who was the strongest man you had ever actually known. I mean, his hands were just massive from 60 years of manual labor and hard work, right? As a kid, I can remember him putting his hand on my shoulder when I ran the table saw for the first time, picking me up when I fell off a ladder, grabbed me by the back of the neck when I was maybe a little too cocky and talking back to him. I remembered his hands, and they symbolized the strength of building something that lasts. So as I was sitting in the hospital with him in his final days, I didn't want to remember him with the tubes and the wires and the breathing masks and some of these things. I snapped a picture of his hand. And I realized that the years and the hours that he spent with me and my cousins as a young man, he was teaching me more than just how to frame a wall, how to hang a door, how to build a cabinet. The example that he led, the compassion that he showed for people, the fire and the strength when he was facing an obstacle or a challenge, the character that he had, right? He was teaching me what it meant to build things that last. A few days after he passed, I was at his funeral with my family, and the minister at the funeral gave a short message. And I don't want anybody to take this as being overly religious or preachy or something, but I thought that for me anyway, the message that the minister shared gave me some really clear insights into this why build something, right? The minister's message could be condensed into 3 simple points. Life is short, death is sure, and then from his religious perspective, he said Jesus saves. Now, I grew up in a very religious family, but this doesn't have to be taken in the religious kind of construct or from a faith-based perspective, because here's what I think this means. Everybody that I've ever met, especially once they have kids or they get into retirement, has said things at some point in time like, it goes by so quickly, cherish your kids, or man, that first 50 years just flew by. I think all of us would agree that life is short. I think all of us, regardless of faith background or not, would agree that death is final, that there is a surety to it. But as I was sitting there at my grandfather's funeral, and I was thinking about the days building with him, and I was thinking about his hands and those lessons, the third point about Jesus Saves for me translated to there's hope. There's hope that we can build things that last long past us. And so as we wound up the funeral, and I spent the next couple of days, thinking about it, and even through now and preparing for this conversation, wanting to just share my heart with you guys, our clients, our family, our friends, other financial advisors. I get asked a lot, where did your entrepreneurial spirit come from? Why are you building a company that does things radically different from other firms? Well, I can trace it back to my grandfather. And the only physical thing that I have of my grandfather's is this sweater I'm wearing. This is his varsity sweater. He was an amazing athlete, played semi-pro baseball. My grandparents didn't leave much money. In fact, they never had much. Of all of the grandkids, I thankfully got this sweater. And it's a physical thing. Transferring physical things is easy. Transferring things that last, transferring values, transferring what matters most, leaving a legacy, that's tough. My invitation to you and my challenge is this. In the fourth quarter of every year at Lifeworks, as part of our family strategic planning system that we designed and built, the focus at the end of the year, as we bring the year to a close, is estate and legacy planning. And again, having a plan in place to transfer financial assets or a physical asset like, my grandfather's varsity sweater from 1945 or 46, something like this, that's relatively easy to do. Having a plan and building an intentional framework for transferring things that are going to last long past you, your legacy, is a challenging thing. So as I sat there that night after the conversation with Bob, thinking about why am I building what I'm building at Lifeworks, and I'm connecting it to, I want to build something that lasts long past me. I want to build something that leaves a legacy, that helps our clients leave a legacy. It became clear to me. My calling is to be a builder. My invitation to you is to see yourself as a builder. We're all building things. We're building families, we're building businesses, we're building wealth, we're building homes, right? We're building our legacies. So here's my invitation and challenge as I wrap up this talk. I have 3 questions for you. What are you building? Who are you building it for? And why? As we bring this year to a close, and as you're working with your advisor, as you're talking to your family and your spouse, your significant other, I think this is an invitation to ask these questions and to use this as a conversation. Are we building the things that matter most, and are we investing in the things that matter most? And are we building things to last? Are we doing it with intention? You see, money and financial assets, in my mind, is raw material. It's part of the work to get to a finished product. It shouldn't be the finished product. Leaving financial assets to kids and heirs is great, but if you don't transfer values and legacy and life lessons, it'll be fleeting. So we are grateful, and I've mentioned this before, I love what I do. I love the fact that we get to help our clients and even challenge ourselves as individuals, thinking about how to take our life's work and connect it to what matters most. I am humbled that we get to serve you and your families. I am grateful for the opportunity to even have a conversation like this and just share our heart and our passion around building a firm that's going to serve you and your family across multiple generations, but not stopping there. Getting to invite you to take this same challenge, to think about being intentional about what you're building, about how you're taking your financial assets, which are important, and using them to invest in things that are even more important. So as we wrap up this year, I hope you find these 3 questions to be ones that you can talk about with your family, ones that you can wrestle with, and that really challenges you to think about the coming year in 2022 and say, what am I building? Who am I building it for? And why am I building it? My invitation for you is to see yourself as a builder. And in 2022, the theme for Lifeworks around our planning system, around our communications, around everything we do is going to be a builder. It's an invitation, it's aspirational. I hope it's something that you see as exciting. And we are absolutely grateful and humbled to get to be on this journey with you, our clients and friends. So thank you for the time today. I hope this conversation was interesting. I hope there was some challenging aspect to it. And I hope for those of you that are parents and grandparents with kids, that this maybe serves as a reminder that the things we, the kids and the grandkids, remember are oftentimes not the things that the parents and the grandparents are thinking about. But being intentional about those things, I now can look back at my grandfather's time with me, and I can see the lessons that he was transferring to me. I can see the assets, right? Building things to last, building things right. I can hear his voice saying to me, Ronnie, he always called me Ronnie, build strong families, build a strong marriage, build strong foundations around you for the things that matter most. That's what I'm passionate about doing, and that's what I'm really grateful and excited to get to have the opportunity to do with each and every one of you and through what we're building at Lifeworks. I hope you have an awesome rest of your weekend from chilly Grand Rapids, Michigan on this beautiful fall day. I wish you and your family all the best. Again, Ron Bullis, the CEO and co-founder of Lifeworks Advisors. Look forward to seeing you again and talking to you on one of our live market updates here in the near future. Have a great weekend and take care.